Hello again. So mc.fly will talk to us about running your fucking infrastructure. Enjoy the talk.
Good announcer. So, hello. I'm mc.fly. This microphone is slightly too loud still. I'm giving you a talk about run your own fucking infrastructure. I have given this talk 1 or 2 or 3 times, but people still would like to hear it, so it's not an exclusive first done talk over here. And I think that more good talks should be recycled. Some of them are just happening not good enough and therefore not reaching a big enough audience. So, I am talking about running your own fucking infrastructure. I'm mc.fly, that's me. Those of you who have been on the camp might have been at Milliways. That's basically the thing that I started, which is an awesome village that appears on hacker conferences. I also do IT security for a business, for a living, like to finance the whole Milliways things. And I've been hanging around this Chaos Computer Club since a while, visited tons of hackerspaces, and like to give talks on conferences because I always talk very much. So, why are we having this talk? May I try to get some user feedback here? Who of you does have an email address? I think most of you who don't have the hands up are lying, to be honest. Who of you does not have an email address where he can give chocolate to his administrator or kick him in the ass in case something is not working? 2 people, 3 people. All the others of you have the chance to give chocolate to your administrators. That will become important later on the talks, by the way. Half-half. He doesn't like chocolate. Okay. Very good. That's a very good start. This whole chocolate thing may become important later on. Depending on your country, some of the things I'm talking about might not be completely legal for you. That especially is things when you fuck around with stuff. Still, I also have a different reason why I came up with this. The terms of conditions. There are tons of people in here who also have an email address that is not with your provider. Who of you, of those people, have read the terms of conditions, and I mean till the end? One person. You've read the... Are you a lawyer? This is very good. Actually, reading terms of conditions is not only telling you what they plan to do, because in their case they've read something like, we might be interested to have a look at your email for marketing purposes and things like that, that basically translates to, we will always read your email and send you spam because of that. It's really very entertaining to read those terms of conditions more than once or more than just one of those, because there's lots of funny things in there. And you sometimes can really see how the people were sitting around the desk and they were like, how do we formulate this that it doesn't sound too intrusive? Because that's what's happening. So, as you have heard of, it's about storing data, it's about your email addresses, but not limited to your email address. This basically goes about all of your stuff that you can do online. This goes from email to instant messenger. The alternative for that is Jabber, to Instagram, to Facebook, to Twitter, to your web provider, to your email provider, to whatever you choose to run your digital life. And if that's not you, or somebody from the hackerspace, or somebody you can give chocolate to, you're running into those problems. So, what problems do I have? First of all, which is today pretty obvious, is the governments have access to your data. And sadly, that means all of them. I will go into details in there later. But further things is that your problem you're running into, which is not too obvious for a lot of people, is other things. The provider which you selected to run your digital life might modify its service or its terms of conditions. I'm pretty sure those of you who have a PayPal account have experienced that lately because PayPal has separated from eBay. That came with a gigantic change of terms of conditions, and depending on your country, it got a lot worse because when they have to change those, they tend to put all of those changes in one big change that you, if you're not a lawyer, lose the overview on what everything and what else got changed in these terms of conditions. So in the split of eBay and PayPal, for example, a lot of these terms of conditions changed a lot, depending on the country, to the worse. But there's other things. Provider might cancel the service, the provider might modify data, the provider might steal data, and the provider might get hacked. So the main question is, who do you trust with your digital data, with your digital life? First of all, the most obvious one, the governments have access. 5 years ago, or I'd say at least 10 years ago, we had a discussion last night if it's 5 years, if it's 7 years, if it's 8 years. That meant basically when somebody was doing surveillance on cloud products, the US, the Five Eyes, US, United Kingdom, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia were reading your digital life. Today that means basically any government that asks can read that. Because if you have ever worked in a provider that supplies, that stores part of your digital life, you will find that in the last 3-4 years, the situation changed a lot. And where you 5 years ago might get a letter from a German government as a German provider, or on Five Eyes government, today you will get those letters from basically countries all over the world. Which is sometimes funny when you get a fax out of your fax machine, which is Arabic, and nobody translated it to English, they just sent the Arabic text to you. Kind of interesting if you're the person that had to deal with all those government-related letters with a certain fax number, when you suddenly look at a language where you have to think about where this comes from. One of the sad things is, for a German, usually it used to be that they basically need a warrant for that. Today that is not anymore the case in most countries. The mandatory warrant by a judge have in a lot of countries been weakened up, I think is a correct term for that. So today you will need less police can come like, this is a very urgent case, we need this now. In a lot of countries they don't need a warrant. They only need a warrant when they have enough time. So you can easily see what that goes to. Imagine being a policeman and having these two alternatives. 1, I have enough time, I need a warrant. 2, I don't have enough time, I can just send this. Just think, what would you think? So, now we're coming to the less obvious stuff. The provider might modify the service. The most common change is that you most likely also have experienced is the provider might charge money for something that has been free before. This is actually a very common market strategy for new companies to get into the market. They provide a service for a while for free, and when the people have gotten addicted to the service because they use it and now parts of their digital life is at that provider, they don't really have an alternative when suddenly it costs money. A provider might cancel a service. A provider might come to the point that he finds out that the product he's supplying that costs him money, money as in servers running in a data center, money as in administrators that run those servers in those data centers, and money in developers that write those services. And then there is the overhead of the product engineer, the product managers, and all the other stuff that comes with the server and that comes with hiring and employing 30 to 40 people, or even more with a bigger service. LinkedIn, I think, has meanwhile gotten above the 1,000 people area just for the tech department. And you need an HR department, and lots of costs that come with costs and people getting employed. So it's totally understandable that some products that don't really fulfill the hopes of the responsible product manager get shut down. I think some of you know some examples in here. The Google Reader is one of the examples that I think actually quite a lot of people used. Google Wave, Google Health, but also other cities like GeoCity. Does any one of you even remember what GeoCity is or was? Yeah, that's like 6, 7 people. Yeah, it's a while ago. Mega Upload is also kind of close because it didn't work out the way they wanted to. Dodgeball, Microsoft Zune. Did any one of you use that? That's a problem for them. But those people who used it were kind of double fucked in this way. Because they got a shitty service, and after the service was over, Microsoft basically said, you have now 2 weeks' time to download all of the software you have paid for. In that case, it's music. All of the stuff you have paid for, you have 2 weeks of time to download it, and then we switch off the service. So a lot of people lost their music because the digital rights management software that was used in Zune is connecting back to the Microsoft servers, and if it can't reach the server, it will not play the music, which is kind of shitty when Microsoft then decides to shut down the servers. Nintendo? Nintendo Wii Connect 24, was it? It's also an example then. Thank you for that. Nice. Next point is, and that is what even less people have on their screen, is the provider might modify your data. Who of you runs a YouTube channel? Is there any people? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people. Did you ever had the case that somebody modified your videos? Like, for example, try to use commercial music. They will remove the sound. That is quite some easy thing. Record a video where you say fuck. Go to Europe, play it. It still says fuck. Go to America, watch the same video, they beep out the fuck. Yeah, well, you're laughing about that as modifying data. And actually that's, in some cases, actually in most cases I would think, violating your intellectual property. And other things that might modify it, which is not so, is the privacy settings of Facebook. Facebook has a lot of interest of setting your profile as public as possible because that's how this works. People can find you, people get on Facebook. More people come on the platform, more ads for more people they can sell. So the close privacy settings they kind of have to do really annoy them. So from time to time, you might have experienced that. The privacy settings get updated. The whole system got replaced with a slightly changed system, and because it's too complicated to migrate that from the old setting to the new setting, they just put everybody back to default, which then is everything is visible to everybody. The provider might steal data. That is actually kind of a harsh word, and the providers would reject that because they tell you so in the terms of conditions, which I think 2 or 3 people here were reading. For some companies, that's even the business case. bit.ly, tinyurl, their case is their work with detecting trends over things that get shared over their services and other stuff. In this case, they're not personalized, but it's still, they're taking your data and working with that Well, they do tell you that in the terms of conditions, somewhere deep down there, but not really openly. They give you the impression that if you share something, you sometimes can even set a password, which gives you the impression this is now private. Why is there otherwise a password? Which it is totally not. And Instagram, who of you is using Instagram? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people. Still, you have read the terms of conditions of Instagram, right? Did you ever read the, also actually very interesting source, the business reports they do? And the business reports they do for shareholders and potential shareholders and investors, they show what their business case is, which is an explanation for how do we plan to make money with this thing. And for Instagram, the case is they're selling pictures. And the nice thing about user-generated content is you don't have to take the pictures yourself or pay anybody to take pictures. They just set a web page where people can upload pictures, can show around the pictures, and they sell those pictures. If you upload a picture to Instagram, there is a chance that a customer for, say, laundry machines might be interested in your pictures and want to buy it for an advertisement campaign. Whereas as long as this is happening with a laundry machine, that's not really so bad. But there are companies out there that sell things like erotic images, and they also need sometimes background pictures. You gave them the permission, and for a while it was even stated explicitly. It's not the case anymore. At the moment they just say, we might sell your picture. It doesn't say anything about that, but for a while they were even explicitly saying, we might sell your picture, even maybe to service providers that do things like erotic things. Well, they removed that, and everybody was happy with Instagram that they removed it, which I think is not really totally helpful. But yeah, Instagram, for example, is an example of a company that lives out of selling the user-generated content to other companies, or to short it up, that is stealing your data and selling it for themselves. That's a business case. Providers might abuse your data. So that's also an interesting case. Somebody sets up a web service and then uses the user-generated content that comes out of that in a way that is completely different. Usually, they claim that is done to improve service quality and security. For example, Microsoft Skype prefetches links. And if this link you provided is protected with a password, they're trying the words before or after that. Just try this out, it's insane. Because they would expect that if you send a link that is protected by a password, that you try something that you also send this username and the password. So they're just trying the stuff around it. Which is kind of interesting if you have the chance to read the log files, which you actually only can if you run your own fucking infrastructure. Other cases in there is the abuse of OAuth. Common cases there is LinkedIn and Facebook that embed this stuff in other sites where you don't necessarily want to have that. Most likely also without their users. Also what things is LinkedIn used the OAuth for Gmail. Oh, do you know what OAuth is? Who of you does know what OAuth is? Okay, OAuth is an authentication interface that, for example, where you can allow Facebook to access your Gmail account and the address book. They very often advertise it as connect your accounts. Read the terms of conditions here. And then you see, for example, if you connect your Gmail account to your LinkedIn, we will send out an invitation to every contact in your address book for LinkedIn. And they sell this as expand your network and all the stuff. Which is not necessarily too nice, but that's not all they, in all the cases, do. Facebook, for example, also asked how many mails you have sent to that person. We're still in the service. That is something that I think Facebook doesn't need to know. But again, read the terms of conditions. It's all in there. And for the last point, this is a hacker conference. This might be the most entertaining slide for you, possibly. And it's by far not complete. So there was, for example, a website, which most of you most likely knew, which URL was didsonygetheackedthisweek.com. You can just call it. It answers with yes or no. But this also, GoDaddy was hacked, Dropbox was hacked several times, AT&T lost their customer database because the only way they protected their data was they enumerate the customer number. So if you are all, in this case, AT&T customers, in that case it was about Apple product customers at AT&T, you were user 1, you were user 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And the security was they sent you a link with, please download your stuff for your activation of your Apple product. Your customer ID is 9. So CID equals 9 in the URL. So this way you could, yeah, that is true. That is the Google for that. Somebody went in jail for that, for pointing out that AT&T or was supposed to go to jail for that AT&T just enumerated the URLs. Valve, Activision Blizzard, Living Social, which is kind of a social thingy, social media thingy, again, RockYou, and lately Ashley Madison, which kind of had their army of robots hacked. But this is actually a pretty big case, because just imagine, how big does anyone become a target if they have personal data, potentially interesting personal data, and potentially just validated email addresses? If you ever looked in a digital market, one of the points with personal data is that you can actually sell that. For a verified email address, you will roughly get 3 to 5 euros at the market at the moment. So hacking a customer database with 1 million users and 1 million validated email addresses, where you can see how long or when they have been last active, is actually, for somebody who knows how to find those markets, a very interesting, just money-wise, a very interesting case. And this is why this is so dangerous. Yes, this might also happen with your website. But how many users do you have there? 5? So it's 25 euros and not 5 million. So yes, there is more to get at big providers, and that increases the interest of people to go for those things. So the main question that comes up with this is, what are your interests and what are the interests of the provider? Are your interests and your provider's interests really the same? In Germany, it's the case that running a business is defined on the point of the will to generate money out of that. Like if you do something to make money for it, that's business. And that is actually the case. Most of the providers are business cases that are really, really only interested in making money, because that is how they keep their investors happy. They might have the idea to also run something really nice, but still they had investors, which they need to keep happy, so they need to make money. So the data, keeping your data safe, is only interesting to your provider as long as this gives him extra money. If you don't pay extra for security, or if you are not there because of security, the provider doesn't really have an interest of securing your data. You might say, but yes, but if my provider got hacked, less people will buy the service. But think about that. Sony was hacked in a number of 3-digit, maybe 4-digit cases. Still people buy Sony products. It didn't really have an impact on the market numbers for Sony. It's not true from other companies. Some companies didn't survive being hacked. I actually would forecast that Ashley Madison will not survive the last case. This company will, in my forecast, not be there in 1 year. There will be 2 other companies who try to take over the market of giving men the impression that robots like them. But I doubt that they will still be there. So there is actually a service provider whose interests are perfectly aligned with yours, and that's yourself. If you go to the hacker spaces, it's not completely aligned, but it's way more aligned. And I'm pretty sure you have seen this phrase, which is really important. If the product is free, there's 2 cases, and actually there is mostly just 1 case. If the product is for free, you are the product. If Facebook offers you free accounts to handle your social life and all the stuff on there, you're the product that they are selling, and they are also selling advertisement too. People go there because all the other people are there. They are the product. And when people go there, they can sell them ads. When you go there, you're then the product. Now I want to make a disclaimer here. Governments and hackers will nearly always get access to your data with enough resources. Cloud services make that for the government pretty easy, because it means that they need to go to the folder of the templates, take one of the templates, change 3 to 6 values, print that, put that in a fax machine. They still use fax. It's unbelievable they still use all fax machines. And send it to the company, and they will get the data. Because nearly no company today will not do that, because then they're in a world of pain from the government or from other governments. So really hacking into a box that runs somewhere in a data center is a lot more costly than sending a piece of paper. For that, you just need a trainee in the law department. For the other stuff, you actually need a hacker that actually knows what he's doing. Maybe you just need to raise the bar enough that looking for your data is not that easy anymore. That they don't need a 4-week trained kiddie that uses the last tool, but they need a really proper hacker and really need some 0 days to get in your data if you update it completely. So what it means, that you can alter the variables in the cost per surveillance equation there. And that's actually not too hard. Okay, I made this talk a while ago for the first time, and I made the slides a while ago. And you possibly saw that there is not a lot of argument about government. When I made the slides, that was different. I had to explain people that, yes, really, some governments really do spy on you. This guy made it a lot easier. He told us that basically all governments are trying to spy on everybody when they can, not even regarding that it might be interesting for them at that moment, but it might be interesting later even. And that is even enough reason to store this data, to get a copy of your data and to store this. He told us about PRISM and all the other products, because that's what it is to the NSA. PRISM is a product for them. And it was not the first project that was used there. There were a lot of other things. There was Trailblazer, there was Turbulence, Red Hook, Carnivores, and very, very early in the beginning, Echelon. So who of you have heard about PRISM and the releases of Snowden? That is half of the people. Is the other people too lazy to raise the arms, or did you really not know about this? Okay, who of you have heard about Carnivore? 3, 4, 5. You see where it's going. I think quite a lot of people, I saw that some people started typing as like 10 seconds after I got into the slide. This is actually, some of them are really interesting projects. Not all of them worked in the way they were intended, and some had interesting and funny side effects and problems who are sometimes now hilarious to read on the internet. You really should do that and inform yourself about that. But yeah, Prism is just the one that got the large media attention. You just saw it here by yourself. Everybody now and his brother and his sister knows about that. For all the other projects, that was not the case. So, I just told you what to not do. We need to get to things that you can do. So, who of you has been called by a hacker that he's a hacker in here? And who of you has ever seen a hacker space or has a group of people he hangs around with? You may be, not everybody is maybe able to run the stuff by himself. But for things like, for example, hacker spaces or groups, team up. Get the best people in your hacker space in your group to set up something like this and run it yourself. Hackerspace is really a good case for that. For a long time, it has been even style and a requirement to have your own email address to get on the interesting mailing lists. I'm from the Chaos Computer Club. We have an email list that's called Intern. With a T-Online email, which is the first German mass email provider that was for free, you for a long time just didn't get on there. Nobody was subscribing you. People were laughing at you when you were posting with that. Today, we would have, I'd say, a pretty big amount of people that even to subscribe to internal hacker email lists with a Gmail account, which is kind of shitty because just one person on this mail address is enough that then the services can read this mailing list. If you have 150 well-protected people on a mailing list that all run their own infrastructure on their own servers, and you have one people that you subscribe that is on Gmail, from that moment on where you subscribe that person, this list is read by the governments and the services. So that is something that we actually need to change back. And I think we have the ability to do that. So don't only think for mail servers. There's actually a lot of things that you can run. I'm not reading all of those because I think all of you are intelligent enough to be able to read yourself. If anybody's interested, I can show him the example we are running after this talk. But all of those things can be run by yourself. It's actually not really complicated. So yes, running your own infrastructure will require a change of culture again, because our culture has changed over the last decade from needing to run all this stuff, from doing all this stuff to even get into the group of those people. To today, it's totally free to use Gmail, and I mean, we're in Serbia here. Gmail is an American product, so primarily the American government will be reading this. If you run your own infrastructure, you will solve most of the issues we're talking about. So, if you would like to still continue that, do that. If you're aware of the problems you're running with that, and if it's okay for you or the involved people on the mailing list, the people on the mailing list, then just do that. But at least a while ago, that was not the common hacker approach. And that is, I think, where we should get back to. Oh yeah, this is, for example, this is what we do with Milliways. Milliways is not a hacker space, it's kind of a group of people that try to make free beer and free food for other people on hacker camps, and it works awesome. Our product, when you want to speak, this is kind of this small shiny metal thingies that we have. And yeah, things like Java email, CalDAV, CardDAV, what you can do with OwnCloud very easily. Cloud file storage, we use cfile for that. Redmine to organize your hackerspace, your groups, your projects within that. Redmine is a mix of a ticket system with a wiki and some furthermore things you need for stuff. And Etherpad. Clearly missing here is the wiki, which I, for a reason I don't know, forget there. Anyway. So, if you have to run with a lot of stuff, if you run a lot of stuff, you have to deal with a lot of administrative work. Just one side note, if you do this for more than 5, 6, 7 users, write scripts and start doing that early. Because if you don't, you will later have to deal with users that get formatted kind of by hand, that got entered into the database by a manual SQL query, for example. Later on, the script is that, and for example, did things like testing, are all the variables set, so script all the stuff early. I also recommend using LDAP for that, but I need to point out that the common implementation we have at the moment, being OpenLDAP, is the biggest pain in the ass that has been run over my administrative work. Even setting up a simple LDAP can take a group of people days, and no, I'm not joking, because the whole concept and the whole way, like, who of you has ever seen an OpenLDAP config file? Then you possibly do understand what I mean, right? I see nodding people there. Yeah, but it's work to do that, because if you have your scripts in the end that do that, it's actually pretty nice to do so. Something we are trying out at the moment is to not use OpenLDAP anymore, but to migrate to Privacy IDEA, which has the nice feature that it also adds two-factor authorization. I personally like the YubiKey there, which can be implemented very, very easily into the system this way. But Privacy IDEA would be enough for its own talk. So, we're coming to an end. I hope I'm not rushing too much, and we're just 50 minutes in the talk now. Yes, this is the first thanks slide. I would like to thank the American government, because by employing Snowden and then fucking too many things up, they made this talk a lot easier, and it took roughly 12 slides out of this talk, which are just not needed anymore today. But I would also like to express thank yous for all the administrators that do things for me. And so should you. Remember the chocolate? Say thank you to your administrators from time to time. It's worth it. And I also would like to say thank you all the people in the Milliverse widget that helped me doing this slide and these things. So that means we're now coming to questions and answers. Does any one of you have a question, or even 2 or 3?
You mentioned Pond earlier in the talk. Pond, asynchronous email service. No, didn't mention it. A pond.
No. Pond, I think I mentioned the pool that gaps Europe and America usually. Sorry for my bad English. I'm a German, it's not my native language. Anybody else with questions? If you ask them, I will repeat them.
I don't know, did you mention that you can use Ansible to configure your infrastructure? And Ansible makes things a lot of easier. I just want to mention Ansible. Yeah.
He asked about Ansible. I don't use that. There is lots of tools that make your life easier if you know how to use them. I encourage people, if you have somebody in the group that knows how to use them, to use them. So in general, yes, I think that's a good idea. Just for me in personal, I haven't used it, or our group, we haven't used it. But yes, I would recommend if you have somebody who has knowledge with that, use that. It makes your life a lot easier. Any more questions? Three, two, one. So, then thank you for listening to the talk. I hope those of you who are still in the group or in the hackerspace still use mostly Gmail and other stuff will go home after this weekend and try to set up... No, you don't need to delete it. Run it on your own. It will take a while to migrate stuff over. You cannot just go there, delete everything. You will need the emails. You will need the other stuff. You will have to set up things. You have to play around with them. This takes some days, and then you can all move that over. Gmail, for example, you can very easily migrate to a normal mail server by just, for example, Thunderbird and just copying it over. It works awesome. Okay, thank you, and have a nice day at the BalCCon.